I've got to go back. So you were in your truck, you were crying, you thanked Jesus because you'd just found something. How did it go from there? I mean, obviously, you said you got your wife back, so how did it go from being in that truck at the lowest point to feeling like you were going to kill yourself to all of a sudden finding Jesus, finding a gift, and then to where you are today?
Ladies and gentlemen, coming to you from somewhere in New Zealand, it's the YouTube show with Dave Benson.
That's right, we're back. Thank you for watching, thank you for being here, and thank you for pressing whatever mystical combo of clicks, taps, accidental swipes, and fat finger scrolls brought you to this exact moment in time. Welcome back to the Dave Benson Show, the #1 independent talk show on the planet. Now, whether you're on a laptop, a phone, or your grandma's iPad that still thinks it's 2017, welcome. If you're new to the show, let's start off by hitting that big subscribe button right down there below. That's really important because we're allergic to even numbers. You can also follow us on Instagram for some behind the scenes chaos, and we'll put that right up there so you can see that there. Follow us on the Instagram or connect on LinkedIn if you want to see us looking professional, and we'll put those details right there. You can also catch us on TikTok where I film my monologues from angles no man ever should. And we'll put those details in the corners, so you'll be able to see those there. All right, let's start the show. Let's start with a sad note. This is really bad. So this week we've lost some incredible talent from all over the entertainment world. This is our tribute to them. So let's kick off with one of the big ones, Ozzy Osbourne, the godfather of heavy metal, age 76. Really sad to see him go. Another big loss in this last week was Malcolm Jamal Warner. You'll know him as Theo Huxtable from The Cosbys. He's also been in a plethora of other shows and movies. Passed away sadly at 54, far too young. Tragic accident, really going to be missed. Our thoughts and prayers there. Michael Madison passed away. You'll know him from Reservoir Dogs and Kill Bill. 67, again, far too young, far too young. We also lost Tom Troop, the Broadway royalty and screen actor. Connie Francis, the original pop princess. Richard Greenberg, Tony-winning playwright. And this morning I heard Hulk Hogan passed away very sadly. He, of course, was the WWE legend. I still remember the match between him and Andre the Giant, the Ultimate Warrior, like it was yesterday. Such an inspiration back in the 80s. We honor them all, and we truly do wish them well on their next journeys. Our thoughts and prayers are with the families and friends. Let's click back into the usual programming, and it's time for the YouTube news. So YouTube's been busy, and I mean, I felt like I had a coffee and something in my soul shifted kind of busy. They're testing threaded comments. Now that means for the first time ever, people might argue in order. Revolutionary. Honestly, if this had existed earlier, maybe I wouldn't still be feuding with that one guy from 2022 who thinks my lighting setup is a cry for help. YouTube's also rolled out AI-generated music tools, which is perfect because I've always wanted a robot to write my theme song. Something like, "You're watching Dave," and he's slightly confused but deeply passionate. Honestly, it's a work in progress. Starting July 15th, they've officially began cracking down on AI slop their words. Not mine. Basically, if your video is 10 minutes of pixelated AI whispering nonsense into a void, YouTube's like, nope. Meanwhile, I'm here writing my own monologues like a caveman with Google Docs. The YouTube liaison, a guy named Rene Ritchie, who honestly sounds like a Bond villain turned podcast host, clarified that this isn't a ban on AI. Just a reminder that if your content feels like it was made by a toaster with an arts degree, it's not going to fly. Of course, the internet is split in two. Creators are freaking out. Marketers are clapping like seals at feeding time. And I'm just here wondering if I can get ChatGPT to write my next out of office when I go to Bali. YouTube added title A/B testing. So, now you can test multiple titles for your videos. I'm testing one for mine with "Watch this now" versus "Please watch this or I'll cry." Spoiler, mine worked better. And finally, They've finally confirmed that users under 16 can no longer solo live stream. Now, we've announced this before, but it came into effect on July 22nd, which makes sense. I've got a 6-year-old and he live streams every time he opens a box of cereal. It's chaos. Now, over in the land of podcasts, where people sit in closets talking to microphones and somehow land brand deals, the folks at Investopia Express did a whole episode on stable coins, market highs and private equity. I listened to it, and then I immediately looked up, what is equity? And quietly cried into a finance book. The US Senate passed something called the Genius Act. Now, this sounds like something A.M.E.N would sponsor. It's basically a law to make crypto more legit, finally giving people a way to use their Bitcoin for something other than buying weird sunglasses and regret. And while we're on the important legislation, Sue Bird and Megan Rapinoe are now podcasting live from sports arenas. That's right, women's sports media is finally getting the stadium it deserves. And I'm just here podcasting from a room next to my cat's litter box. Azzy Fudd, rising Yukon star, launched her podcast, Fudd Around and Find Out. Now, I'm not saying I'm jealous, but her title rhymes and has edge. Mine just has a logo I made from Canva. Over in NFL land, the Daily BPW show covered Von Miller switching teams and Frankie Louvu breaking into the top 100. And if you don't know who Frankie Louvu is, don't worry. I didn't either. But now I want to name my next houseplant after him. And lastly, in podcast news that genuinely warmed my heart, some creators are now selling out live podcast events like it's a stadium tour. It's beautiful, really. I mean, imagine people lining up to hear me ramble in real time. Actually, no, don't imagine that. I've seen the YouTube comments. And that's your YouTube and podcast roundup for today. Creators, chaos, and more acronyms than a taxation seminar. Now, let's roll on, because the real reason you're here today is the two guests I've got lined up. Two legends who speak truth and make waves. Today we've got voice actor specialist Peter Matthews, and he's rapping lyrical rhymes, Eric Cohen. Let's roll these titles.
I said I want to see the Dave Benson Show, and I can't stop and never gonna let it go. I said I want to see the Dave Benson Show, and I can't stop and never gonna let it go.
Welcome back, everyone. My next guest is more than just a musician. He's a storyteller, a survivor, a messenger of hope. Based in Missouri, he uses his voice and his beats to bring light into dark places. From facing addiction and homelessness to discovering faith and transformation, his life, he now blends hip-hop with powerful messages of redemption. Please welcome to the show, Eric Cohen. Eric, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good, Brother Dave. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. And you're on, we were saying before we started the show, you're on Thursday night. I'm on Friday morning. What does Eric do on a Thursday night?
Man, I was actually sitting in the studio just about to record some stuff and saw the notification pop up as a reminder. I said, okay, I've got an interview to be on.
Nice. Awesome. But if you didn't have an interview, would you just be mixing beats and playing music?
Yeah, that's about it. I've got the kids upstairs. I just got home from my day job about an hour ago. So enjoying the household, just got done feeding the kids. So yeah, hey, that's a Thursday for me.
Eric, you've got such a fascinating life. Let's have a chat. Let's dig into it. So, I mean, did you always want to do music? You were homeless. You've been through various states. What happened? What was the journey?
Man, so to start from the beginning, back in 1803, there was a massive flood. No, I'm just kidding, man. No, so really it all started out about 7 or 8 years old, and I won't go into too many details, but 7 or 8 years old, I started taking these psych meds, and a lot of people around my age were probably prescribed the same ones, Ritalin, Adderall, ADHD meds were kind of what started me down this path at 7 or 8 years old. Progressed forward a little bit to 12, and I started getting institutionalized in psych wards. And so this was from the ages of 12 to about 17, I spent in psych wards, which you can imagine does a couple things to a child. One is that it institutionalizes their minds. It takes away the ability to be able to socialize in the same way that other children may. So I was at a disadvantage in that way, and it also made me view myself, and probably maybe there was a hint of truth to it, but I was an outsider. I always lived on the outside cusp of society. I was never quite accepted. I was never quite involved with what everybody else was doing, and it was a lonely place to be, you know. And so,
Wow.
yeah, it's a pretty heavy spot. I was bullied as a child in high school. They called me Columbine. This was right after the Columbine massacres in Colorado. Well, they gave me the fabulous nickname of Columbine. So it was, rough going as a child, man. And there was many nights where I just prayed to die. I would put on some old Led Zeppelin or some old Pink Floyd or some blues from Stevie Ray or Jimmy, man, and I would just drain away this pain, or just hope to die, man. That's all I
Oh,
wanted to
man.
do, and it was a miserable time.
I remember, and I grew up in the UK, and I remember hearing about all of these drugs that were used for ADHD, particularly in the States. I never saw that so much in England. Was that just prevalent throughout America at that time? I mean, that would have been, like we were talking about age, that would have been in the 80s and 90s?
Yeah, so imagine the early 90s, and I think it was pretty prevalent in the United States. A lot of people my age were also done the same way. Adderall or Ritalin became this almost just drug to hand out to children if you had any kind of extra movement, if you thought too much. I mean, there's just, in my own opinion, way too many symptoms that they prescribed this medication for, and all this medication is legal amphetamine. So I don't know if the UK or the rest of the world has a problem with meth, but it's a pretty big and horrible thing here in the United States, methamphetamine. And
Yeah.
that's what this is. It's illegal methamphetamine is what this is. It's a designer drug.
So I don't know much about the drug, and I don't want to delve too deep, but what does it do? I was under the impression for ADHD or something that'd be suppressing and trying to make you less active, but you're saying that this drug did the opposite?
So it depends on whether you need the drug or not. In fact, it did help me to super focus. But in my super focus, I was stuck on things. And it developed inside of me this yearning that I didn't know or understand how to feed after I got away from the medication when I was 17, which therefore led me to chase it in other ways, which was meth. It had such a similar feeling, the meth did, but the difference is that I would give up anything when I was addicted to meth to do meth. Maybe not so much in the Adderall or Ritalin. However, there were still those withdrawals when you came off of it, which stink.
Wow. So as a child, you're on Adderall and Ritalin. And then as you get older, you still crave some form of drug. And then at 17, you make your way. Was it a mild transformation? Was it marijuana, ecstasy, and then into meth? Or was it straight from one to the other?
Man, I started using prescription medications when I was probably 10 or 11 or 12. And that
Wow.
would be the likes of Xanax and things of those nature. Yeah, I started off at a pretty young age and was using meth pretty frequently by the age of 16. Stopped for a long time, went to the military, actually went to the Navy from the age of 17 to 19. Then my mother passed away.
Oh, I'm
And
sorry.
yeah, it hit me. I was gone away from her, and it hit me in a way that just, it hurt. And so it led me to escapism, which is what I tried to do. I tried to run away from the pain that I had inside of me. And until I found a healthy way to deal with that pain, I was stuck. And finally, here I am. And the healthy way I have found is Jesus, man. He saved me from the things that were binding me down, the things that were trying to kill me. When they say there's darkness and light and there's spiritual warfare and there's spiritual things, in my mind or my perception, there truly is.
So you came back from the military and then you went back onto the meth, obviously, after your mother passed. And so how long was that period? So how long were you doing? And is that where you became homeless?
I didn't start using methamphetamine again right away. There were other things I'd use, like pain pills, ecstasy. Weed was definitely a big one, or marijuana. Um, all these things I had used, but around the age of 25, my ex-wife got pregnant with my son. And right before that time, I had actually started using meth again. And so, man, it was a terrible thing. I was so scared. I didn't know if I could be a good father. All these different things were hitting me. I didn't have my mother, like all these different things. And I went back to escape. And so, from the time of 2011 to November, or 2010 to November 24th, 2013, I used again really heavily. And it cost me a lot. It ended up costing me my job, my place to live, my marriage. Even though it did come back, it's now gone. However, it did come back for many years. I was able to live a life with her and had another child and everything. However, it affected everything. That drug use, that 3-year period, I lost so much.
And at what point was it? So obviously you found Jesus. That was your savior to be able to make a transformation. But at what point was it that you found that? And how did that come about? Because I'm guessing that someone didn't just walk up to you with a pamphlet and you said, oh, okay, well, this will help. There must have been a point. Was it the deepest low or something else?
I'll talk about the point that really helped me in understanding who Jesus was and the miracles that he performed. So in that time stretch I told you about, 2013, right before I got clean, or right when I got clean, I got sent to this place called Valley of Hope. And at this place, there was a pastor, and he said, do you really want to be with your wife? And at this point, my wife had hated me for many good reasons. She did. He said, if you want to be with your wife, just let me pray over you. And I did. I let this man pray over me, and I was within 2 months, I was back in the household with her, and we lived many years together. Uh, in fact, until last August. But around 7 years ago is when everything was solidified. I went and got baptized. And when I came up out of the water, man, I made a grave error. I committed a sin. I connected eyes with this woman, and I ended up committing sin with her. You know what I'm saying?
I do, yeah.
And I felt such conviction in that sin that I had to go home and tell my wife, again, the same woman, of what I had done. I knew if I didn't tell her, I was going to go kill myself. And
Jeepers.
yeah, I mean, that's the weight of what I felt. I knew it was so heavy on me that if I didn't go tell her, I was probably just going to eat a bullet. There was no other options. It was either tell her or die. So I went home and I told her that Sunday night what had happened. And it was the hardest thing I had ever had to do, to watch that woman break down, and it sucked. And she kicked me out like any good woman would. And so I spent 3 weeks out in my truck. And in this time, I was just, I was done. I didn't want to live anymore. And I was sitting in my truck. I had just woken up one morning, and a beat was playing on my YouTube music. And I was writing a poem at the same time. And I've always been a poet, grew up to the likes of Edgar Allan Poe, Emily Dickinson, Robert Frost. These are classics around the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Grew up to those likes. I'd always loved poetry, and I was writing no different than I would have done, 20 years ago. This time was a lot different, though. I heard something audibly speak to me saying, I want you to rap this. I'm like, okay. And I knew it was the Lord. He said, I want you to rap this. The Holy Spirit was speaking to me. And I'm like, I felt a lot like Moses in this point. I was like, are you sure you have the right person? Here I am, a 35-year-old white guy at this point. And I'm like, I don't think this is me. You want me to rap this? It's like, yeah, I want you to rap this. And so I was obedient. And I let my mouth open up, and I let these words flow forth. And I'd never rapped before. I'd tried, but I let these words flow forth. And by the end of this experience, I sat in my truck and I cried like a little girl for about 15 minutes straight. And the only words I could utter out of my mouth were, thank you, Lord, thank you, Lord, thank you, Lord, because I knew that this was a gift he had given me. It was a purpose. It was a reason. It was a glimmer of hope. It was something tangible that he had just put in my hands and put in my mind to be able to do, to continue going forward. And so I promised him at that point I would only use this gift for him, which is why I only do hip hop for Jesus. There's a lot of emotion behind my hip hop because of the hip hop I grew up with. You got to imagine the late 80s, early 90s. It was the same people you were probably listening to in New
I
Zealand
remember it.
or England, UK. Yeah,
Yep.
all the same people. So that's what I grew up with. And so my hip hop reflects a lot of that styling. It's except it's edifying. That's the difference. It's edifying for the soul.
So, do you find now that with your hip hop, you're telling your story, or are you telling other people's stories, or are you trying to tell people the word of Jesus? How do you mix it?
That is a great question, and it's all three, actually. It's all three combined in one. I'm telling my story. I'm telling the story of countless others who have been through the same thing but struggle in silence or think that they're completely alone or isolated in the incidents that they're going through. And I am, also telling people about the gospel message because that's the most important thing for me to do in my song. And so it's all three of those things combined in one to deliver an impactful message and a moment of hope and understanding to someone on the other side of the speaker.
I've got to go back. So you were in your truck, you were crying, you thanked Jesus because you'd just found something. How did it go from there? I mean, obviously, you said you got your wife back. So how did it go from being in that truck at the lowest point to feeling like you were going to kill yourself to all of a sudden finding Jesus, finding a gift, and then to where you are today?
Well, you know what? I wish I could say that it was like I jumped up from that point and everything was amazing, but that is
That's not life.
Yeah, that's not life. It was a hard battle. There was a lot of things inside of me I had to face, a lot of healing that's happened in those last 5 or 6 years to bring me to the point where I'm at now. And I am no longer with that woman. I respect her, admire her, but I am no longer with her.
Yep.
But man, it's been a journey to get to the point where I'm at now.
Do you remember the first track you ever recorded? So you've started to think that you want to do this. How did it then take off into putting a track onto some vinyl?
So the first one I did that I actually released was called When You Die. And it was a beat I bought off of YouTube, a leased beat. And it already had the chorus inside of it, it was beautiful. And I just went ahead and did my thing, and it was pretty well received. For not doing this before, for not having this capability, and then almost seemingly overnight, being able to rap and produce hip hop music.
And where are you up to now? So are you releasing albums? Are you putting out lots of singles? Are you performing anywhere?
Yeah, I've got all three of those things going on. Releasing albums. What I do is I release a lot of singles and I compile into an album, usually with a bonus track on it. But at this point, I have about 49 to 50 songs in my catalog, excluding collaborations in the last 6 years. I've also been nominated this year. I won 2 awards last year, but the third biggest gospel award show in the United States, called the Rhythm of Gospel Awards. I've been nominated in 3 categories this year, so I have 3 opportunities to receive an award. And then I've been nominated in the Gospel Music Sound Awards as well as a top 10 finalist as a Christian hip hop artist. So that's pretty dang excited. We'll see where we're going. And then performances coming up. I've actually taken a big break from ministry, but I've been doing, small things. I say I take a break, but that means doing a lot less than I was, which was a lot. But in August 1st through the 3rd, I'll be up in Pennsylvania, and I'll be doing probably a 45-minute set, and Ben Fuller and Brian Welch from Cohen, the band Cohen. I don't know if you remember them.
I do.
They'll be headlining the concert that I'll be at. So that's pretty exciting.
You said about collaborations. So, question. If you could collaborate with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be?
So I have shouted his name out about 1 million times, and I'm going to do it one more. TobyMac is the man that I really want to collaborate with. When I came into this walk of faith, when I started believing in Christ, TobyMac's music was the one that I picked up and listened to the most. It was the most relatable music to where I was. And so I would really like to do a collaboration with him.
Have you spoken to him?
I've tried. He's a hard man to get a hold of.
Toby, if you're listening, Eric's trying to get hold of you. We're going to put his phone number down here so you can find it. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you today. Thank you so much for sharing your journey. It's amazing.
Yeah, hey, thank you so much for having me on. I now have a brother out in New Zealand, correct?
That's right, my friend. And now, where would you like your details to appear on the screen? Where do you want me to put them?
Top right.
Top right. Okay, for all of Eric's details, they can be found here. This is his socials, all of his music and songs and everything he's got going on. We're going to be back right after these messages. My next guest is a master of storytelling whose voice has breathed life into countless characters across various genres. A classically trained British actor, he's transitioned seamlessly into the world of audiobook narration and voice acting, captivating audiences with his warm, youthful tone and impeccable characterizations from children's tales to sci-fi adventures. His versatility knows no bounds. Operating from his home studio in Bedfordshire, England, he is also the voice behind hundreds of characters for Poland's prominent learning language platform, Funtown. Please welcome to the show, Peter Matthews. Peter!
Hello, Dave. That's the best introduction I think I've ever had for anything. I want to take that with me everywhere. That's great. Thank you.
I will send you a copy. I think that rather than do a YouTube show, I'm going to quit it all and just introduce people into rooms or something. I think that's the market.
That sounds like a great idea. You know, there's a guy on YouTube, he's a comedian who like stands in doorways and just like welcomes people into random shops. He sort of wears a inner jacket and I can't think of it. He's quite a well-known comedian, but he does this whole thing. And you could do that. You could just, introduce people. You know how at Edwardian parties, Victorian parties, they used to have somebody sort of, and now, Mr. and Mrs., you'd be perfect. You'd be absolutely perfect.
I've got a new job. I'm in. How's England, Peter? You're coming into summer now. I'm coming into winter. You're coming into summer.
It's very nice at the moment. It's been a bit wet the last couple of days, but hey, it's England, and that's what we get.
So it's Thursday night over there. What's a Thursday night for Peter look like?
Well, a Thursday. Well, I'm generally not. I'm not working this late. Hopefully, it would be a very busy day, or I'd be on a terrible deadline if I was working. So, me and my wife were just sitting watching our favourite game show, which is Richard Osman's House of Games. I don't know if that's made it all the way to New Zealand.
Never heard of it.
It's great. It's just celebs and silly quiz rounds, which just a bit of fun, really. But I like a quiz. I do like a quiz show. I'm good in a quiz.
Let's talk about you now. You were originally trained at the Webber Douglas Academy.
That is correct. Yes.
Yeah, and was acting always your thing? Was little Peter? Is that what the dream was when you first started? Did you watch the 4 channels on British TV and be inspired in the early, late 80s, early 90s by what there was?
I came to acting later than maybe some kids. I think I was about sort of 16, 17 when I figured out that that's what I wanted to do. I was quite a shy kid. Although talking about the 4 British channels on British TV, I was talking to somebody else the other day, one of my inspirations for getting to the point of telling stories professionally and being an audiobook narrator honestly goes back to something we had on British TV in the 1980s called Jackanory. Great Rick Mayall, the great comedian and comedy actor Rick Mayall, did George's Marvelous Medicine for Jackanory. And he didn't just read it, he kind of just performed it in this amazing, chaotic way. He sort of was George I don't know if you know the story, but George creates this medicine which he ends up feeding to his grandma, and she turns into a giant and all this stuff. But it was so extraordinary, and I talked to so many people about that, and they go, "Oh God, yes, I remember that." And for I was probably like 8 or 9. I think that's where I fell in love with storytelling. You know, that's like one of those sort of inception moments. Like, wow, it can be that good. It can be that captivating.
So then you decided that. So you were originally acting, and then you decided voice acting, or?
Well, I mean, that's a very short description of a very long journey. So yeah, I went to drama school like lots of sort of young, green, glossy-eyed kids, and I was like late teens, early 20s. Yeah, I had a good time at drama school. Came out the other side, did a couple of things, and it's a tough old business. And so I kept acting, but not professionally particularly. Once I'd sort of settled down and got married, have kids, and life takes over, and you've got to try and do other stuff. And I was always doing bits and pieces, as well as trying to hold down other jobs to make ends meet.
Mm-hmm.
Then on the back end of the pandemic, which I think the pandemic for a lot of people was like a moment to reassess. It made you stop, it made you think. And 2021, I fell in love with this idea of building a home studio like this, where I'm speaking to you from now. And so I went ahead and I just built it and did a bit of research and found out about the tech and made a ton of mistakes putting it all together. And then just slowly started looking for different bits of work, different things I could do. And all the time I was thinking, I'd love to do audiobooks. I'd love to do audiobooks more than anything else. And then, over the last few years, I've just built myself up, got to know different people in the business, and that's what I do full time now.
Audiobooks, that's a tough gig. I've spoken to a couple of people who do that, and people like voice acting for characters, for games, for things like that, because it's short stints of work, but it's good pay for what they're doing. But audiobooks is like, well, it depends on the size of the book, but it can be a behemoth task to work through.
100%. And I do a bit of everything. I've done a little bit of animation. I've done a lot of e-learning stuff. I think in the introduction you mentioned Funtown, which is a Polish company. I've done tons and tons of voices for all their online content. So I'm always open to everything. But audiobooks is like my first love. And yes, it's a mad thing to do. It's the marathon running of the voiceover world. One of the books I'm currently working on is 15 hours long.
Wow.
And in terms of, you can spend half a day in a studio doing a really well-paid ad, and I can spend many, many hours in here and probably don't get paid as much. But I do it because I love it, because I love to play all the characters. Right, that's one of the beautiful things about doing an audiobook, is that I get to be everybody. I get to make a cast list and work out what they all sound like. And it doesn't matter what I look like in here, there's no way I could play all the people that I play in an audiobook on stage or on screen. But if you get hopefully a good narrator, you believe it and you go with it, and you just kind of, it's what we do as humans is storytelling, right?
Yes.
It's what makes us human, and oral storytelling goes back as far as civilization, and that's really that's just what I'm doing with audiobooks. It's oral storytelling, and I just love it.
How do you remember all the characters? I've listened to some of your audiobooks as part of the research, and I've listened to your demos as well. And I love your characters, and I love the way you show such passion and charisma for each of the characters. But if you're reading for 15 hours, and say there's a character, Bert, who features at the start, and then comes in 4 hours later because he's been on a quest or something and he's come back, how do you remember what Bert sounds like to be able to get that voice again?
That's a great question. So what I do, the first thing I do when I've got a book is obviously I read the book. It's pretty essential. I've heard of people who don't read the whole thing, but you just never know when you get to chapter 25 whether that character that you've been voicing all along with a Scottish accent, something's revealed that actually they were American all along. And so read the first thing. These things have happened to people. It happens to me. So I read the book, and as I'm reading the book, the thing I'm doing more than anything else is I'm making a cast list. So I have an open document, normally just on my phone, quite honestly. And every time something's said about a character, I'm just making little notes. And I cast them in my head. So I might cast them as a famous actor. It's great because it's imaginary casting, so it can be anybody. It could be somebody who died 20 years ago. Or it can be my next door neighbor Gary, or it can be Dave Benson. That's the great. So I cast them in my head, and I try and make some notes that sort of lock in who that person is in my mind and their voice. And then very often I'll make little recordings, particularly if it's maybe a voice that I've struggled to get right. Sometimes it's if it's something that's really sort of solid in my mind, great, fine, that's set down. And if it's a character that recurs all the way through the book, it should be okay. But as you say, you can do a character at the start of the book and then they appear way later. And that might be 2 weeks later, depending on my schedule and what I'm doing. And yeah, I can easily go, how the heck did they sound? Were they Irish? Did I do them with a lisp? I can't remember. So yeah, all these little notes and recordings, and yeah, my computer is absolutely full of lots of 5, 10, 15-second clips. My phone as well. I'm just forever sort of just making these massive lists, and yeah, I carry.
Do you when you go around Bedfordshire, do you see or hear people and be like, "That's a great accent," or "That's a great I'm going to steal you"?
I can't go anywhere without hearing. It's one of the cool things actually about being an actor is you should never be bored as long as there are like people to watch. And people to listen to, and I'm forever trying to work out where people are from. I think I'm reasonably good at identifying accents, and I'm reasonably good at doing them. Like, funnily enough, you're in New Zealand. 2 doors down, a lady moved in a couple of years ago. She's from New Zealand, and introduced myself, said hello, and she said, "Oh, hi, I'm just moved in." And I said, "Are you from New Zealand?" And she says, "Oh, everyone always thinks I'm from Australia." And I was like, no, it's not quite. It's a nicer accent, isn't it?
Yeah. The question is, Peter, where am I from? Where's my accent from? Can you pick it up?
See, I'm not sure. If I just heard you without saying anything about New Zealand, I'm not sure. I mean, I think you must have spent some time in Australia.
Oh, Peter, I was born and bred in Leicester.
Well, you've not got any Leicester.
It's been hammered out of me.
That might explain why it's not a really sort of pure New Zealand. What do I know? I am no expert on the New Zealand accent. So I wouldn't claim.
I've lived in a lot of places.
You would be absolutely perfect. There's a website that I use all the time. It's called the Archive of International Dialects. And they'd love you because it's got somebody from everywhere, but also it's really interesting when you get somebody who's lived in lots of different countries and you get those mixed accents and you can't quite work it out. In fact, I've got an audiobook coming up where I've got to play an English guy, but he's lived in America a lot of his life. So it's like English-American crossover. It's very hard to find anything that sort of really sits.
What's your process? What's your warm-up techniques? Are we talking the rain in Spain, or are we talking gargling? What's the thing that you do to get ready?
The first thing I do to get ready is I get out the house.
Right.
So I go for a walk almost every morning, just to kind of clear my head. I've got a nice lake that's about 10 minutes from my house, so I'll have a walk around the lake, see what bird life's about. And then while I'm having a walk, I will be doing a bit of a vocal warm-up, as long as there's not too many people about. And occasionally I do walk round a corner while I'm doing my vocal warm-up, and then there's somebody there and I look like a complete lunatic. And yeah, I mean, I don't tend to say, "Oh, it's all right. I'm a voice actor." You know, I just sort of slyly sort of, hide away. So yeah, I go for a walk, and if there's nobody about, I'm doing a bit of a sort of, gentle warm up, like a tongue twister. I know lots of tongue twisters. So, and you can do all this stuff, and then you can sit down to record, and then you still stumble over the same phrase six or seven times. But it's as much about warming my brain up as, yes, you do physically need to warm the mouth up and get everything going. But yes, just kind of also getting mentally in the right place so that I walk in the door and I've come to work, because that's one of the terrors of working from home. Is it's very easy to get distracted. It's very easy to not be in work mode. So I try to think of coming back in the door as like walking into the office, walking into the studio, and now I'm here to work. So
the people of your local town, if they hear you on a regular basis and see this madman, they must think you're schizophrenic for sure, because you'll have been doing different voices and different accents as you go around.
I don't know, maybe. I mean, I've certainly when I've been learning lines for plays in the past, I'll record stuff sort of onto my phone and I'll have an earpiece in and I'll be walking around like doing the lines back to myself. Again, trying to make sure there's not people about, but you get around the corner and you're met by somebody who's sort of, doing a load of Shakespeare or something. At the end of the day, you've got to do what works for you to get yourself in the right space. But yeah, I there must be a few people walking their dogs around my my little bit of Bedfordshire who, that's that guy who's always, and then of course maybe one day they'll see this on YouTube and they'll go, oh right, that explains it.
I hope so, for your sake. So are you a big star in Poland? Do people come up to you and...
I don't think I'm a big star. I mean, I've never been to Poland. I'd love to go one day, and because I've been working with the same people out there for 2 or 3 years now, and I've recorded a lot of stuff for them. So there will be a lot of kids growing up in Poland who know my voice, which is a very weird thing to think about, because their program is in hundreds of schools in Poland. So I've read stories in English, of course, because it's kids in Poland learning English, and they're brilliant. I've seen videos of them doing it and you think, wow, these kids are like 5, 6, 7 and they're speaking English beautifully. So yeah, there's a lot of Polish kids who probably know my voice and know all my silly character voices too, because I have to do about 50 odd little cartoon sort of characters that I've done for them. They have these little characters called the Fuzzies, and each one represents a different question word in English. So there's Watson and Whoosie and Howard. So you get the idea. It works very well for them.
Peter, it's an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time today. For any details on Peter and what he has mentioned already, we're going to put the links left or right, Peter?
Left.
Left. We're going to put them on the left here. This is my left, so it could be your right. So we're going to put the links for Peter right here. You'll be able to click and find him.
Somewhere over there. Wherever. I don't care.
We'll mix them around.
Floating links.
We'll be back right after these messages.
Oh, the devil lives below, and he tells me where